And for those of you who are wondering, this was created using shapes and let me find the path. Oh, let me turn the path point on. There we go. So I drew a path. Then, good evening, Isabella. I'll start on yours in a second. So I drew a path. Then I added a trim path to it. And I animated the off and on. So it's drawing on and then drawing off while it goes along. Then I put Turbulent Displace on the shape layer to give it that fiery, liquidy look. And I duplicated the shape layer and just changed the color and made it a little bit smaller in the path. Then, as you've seen, I made a fractal map using Turbulent Noise this time. Here's my settings to get this. And I threw an expression on the evolution, times 1. So it's constantly moving. It was like time, asterisk. So, and then I used that as a displacement map. So here's my displacement map, and there's the effect with a glow as well. So the displacement map was placed on the shape layers, and it's referencing the turbulent noise. Good evening, Julia. I'll be answering any of your questions after I'm done helping out Isabella. And actually, I can mail out this file for everyone just to have for reference. I'm just doing a quick scrub through. I'm going to let this play once, and then we'll find out what your 3D questions were. Yeah, I got his email. Thanks for letting me know, Julia. Very nice of you to say. Okay, so I'd say leave the text up a little longer. Like I said, this can be a little longer. But I'm loving all the choices you've made. Okay, the Polaroid issue is a matter of Z-space. I can tell right off the bat, and I'm going to tell you the fix for that. The reason that's happening is because this newspaper is a 3D layer, and this is a 3D layer. So let me add a new thing here, and I'll show you what I mean by that. And as always, I use simple shapes just because it's the fastest way to convey an idea. I'm going to color these different just so that you can see it faster and easier. I'm making each one its own layer. Okay, so I've got 3 shapes. And these are my switches. These are my modes. I need to be in my switches. So I click toggle switches and modes down here. And I'm going to 3D enable all of these shapes. And I'm going to hit the P key with all of them selected to bring up position. Here's X, side to side, Y, up and down, Z, closer and further from the camera. Now watch how you start seeing the red circle disappear. That's because when they're all at 0, they're all, you know what? Here's the way to show you. I'm going to add a camera by going layer new. Okay, so I'm going to do my orbit camera. These are all stacked together on the same exact pixel. And as we know, realistically, 2 things can't occupy the same space and time. So if I just move these, just even the slightest bit, and then I'll rotate the camera a little bit. So that's the front on view, but you can see when you look sideways, this is closer to the camera, that's further back, and this is even further still. So what we have to do is we have to push one of those objects further back. Let me see Julia's question. I want to do a Parallax 3D image thing to my files. Okay, great, I'll take a look at that. And this is exactly what Parallax is right here, what we're doing right here. So that's funny that you mentioned it. I'll leave this up for reference. Okay, so in this world, I would push the newspaper back a little bit because the Polaroid would be on top of the newspaper. And there's the 3D layer. See, that's going closer to the camera. Now it's further from the camera. And now you see the whole Polaroid image. Like such. And if you want, you can have this Polaroid casting shadow as it falls. That's up to you as the designer. Let's take a look at that layer. So all I did was I just moved that newspaper. I changed from 0 to 94. So I moved it 94 pixels so that the Polaroid lands on it fine. I think it's called Road. Yep. Okay. So there's right there. Now, if I twirl down these settings, so transform would be the position, scale, rotation, and material is my options for this 3D element. Cast shadows is off. If I click that on, again, I just twirl down the arrows to get to material options. Now, let's see what happens as it's falling. Okay, nothing yet. So, let's see if there's a light in the scene. There's our light. So I go to my light options and I see if Cast Shadows is on. Cast Shadows is off. So now you see right away, there's that shadow we were talking about. Adding some depth to it. And you could say diffusion. This is a hard light. That's a hard shadow it's casting. Diffusion will soften that. So now you've got a softer shadow. Then you could say how dark you even want that shadow to be. Like that. See how much more depth that shading adds? Plus it shows an understanding of light in 3D. Now, right here, it looks like possibly some of the type might be... Okay, there it is coming in. All right, got it. Okay, yeah. Do you have any other questions about your 3D environment that you created? It was really just pushing the newspaper back a little, and then I turned on Cast Shadows for the light, and I adjusted the darkness, and I softened up the pixels so it wasn't such a harsh, hard shadow. I put Cast Shadows on in the material options of the 3D photo. There's material options, Cast Shadows right there. And lastly, like we said, we just moved that newspaper back on Z, the third one over here, about 94 pixels. No problem at all. This is looking really slick. Things like shadow and fall off of focus and light will be huge when you're dealing with 3D. So let's actually take a look at that real quick. I put a camera in this scene, and then I'll download Julia's work. Really, it's all up to you. But this is looking very nice. Do you think I have enough elements for the whole thing? Yes, I would say let it breathe, because all these elements are looking really good. I like how you're thinking about how the text comes in, how it transitions from scene to scene. It's consistent. You've got a good look and feel to it. I would just think of an ending image. See how there's this little bit of a gap from the green and then the newspaper. So that's probably because I would explore that. Wish I could be more help, but they said I'd have to dive into this file and take a look at it. But I like the way it's exiting. What I would probably do is with this last reveal, have the title there or something like that, just for some sense of completion, like call it whatever it is, like crime show or whatever. That's what I'd probably end with, and have that up for a couple seconds. But, like I said, this reveal would be what exposes the title. That would be pretty good. Or maybe you could have like a nice textured background with the type of the show coming in the same way you did with these. So very nice. Happy to see how this is coming along. And 1920 1080, 24p, sure. This does not need to be 32 bits per channel. I'll just work it. Okay, so here's the field. I'm going to put that down there. Let's scale it up. And then we'll do the mountains. And the cloud. The cat. The tree and the sky. Okay. I'm in my modes. I'm going to click on switches. I'm going to 3D enable all of these. And then I'm going to add a camera to the scene by going layer new camera. And for anyone just hopping in now, we are doing Parallax. So what we're doing here, this is not 2D, it's 2.5D, like 2.5 dimensions. The reason this is 2.5 dimensions is it doesn't have depth, like thickness. This is like sheets of paper instead of a thick book. All right, so let's zoom out a little bit, and I'm going to rotate my camera a little just so we can see what's going on. And again, remember, they're all stacked on the same spot in Z space. So I'm going to hit P. They're all at 0 on Z space. Parallax works best when there's a lot of distance between your layers. So let's see which way is back. Going positive in my numbers is going backwards. So let's try minus 10,000. And I'm going to rotate my camera a little bit. Wonder why we don't see it. Oh, you know what? Let's try scaling it up now. Let's hide everything else. Let's try minus 7,000. Maybe I had one too many zeros in there. Okay, there it is at minus 100. Let's try minus 1,000. Oh, wait a second. All right, it's positive is backwards. That's right, okay. Okay, let's put the camera a little bit more straight on. Okay, I'm happy with that. Now I'm just going to scale this up a little bit. And again, that's positive 20,000. So next would be the mountains. So if that's positive 20, let's do positive 10,000, half the distance for the mountains. See, there it is there. Let's scale that up so we can see it. And I'll lower it a little bit. Then I'll do the field next. Okay, the field is at 0. The field. Let's try the other direction. Oh, I see why that's not working. Okay, wait a second. So set that back to 0. And I'm going to rotate it. Not on that axis. On that axis. There we go. And let's move that down a little bit. Over to the side somewhat. Okay. Let's bring that forward somewhat. Okay, that's why we're not seeing it. This needs to be rotated even more. There we go. Bring that back. There. And I'll move the camera. Like such. Okay, so that's roughly in place. That's roughly in place. The cloud. So the mountain's at 5,000. Cloud. Let's go back a bit. And move it up a little. Oops. Just make sure you're on the right layer when you're doing all this stuff. Let's put the cloud in the forefront, I guess. Okay, the cat. Put it closer to the front of the camera. Good. And then there's the tree. We'll bring that really close to the camera. Okay, so here's our 3D scene. And every layer is 3D enabled, and they're all at different Z depths, positive and negative, spread out in space. And you'll notice that when you do the orbit camera, you can see how spread out they are. That's what gives Parallax its power. Let's tilt this a little bit here. Move it over a little, down. So if we were to zoom in here, you notice the relation of everything changes. It looks like everything's moving when all we're really doing is moving the camera. That's what 2.5D does. These are all spread out. If you're going to have things spread out like this, you're going to need transparency. Not everything in the scene needs to be transparent. Like the sky all the way in the background, that doesn't have to be transparent. You know, the grass that I'm using on the field, that was a flat image. But the mountains, they needed transparency because of that. So this is actually, while we're talking about this, let's go to the camera and do depth of field. On. Okay, sure. There is an expression for the focus distance. Can't remember off the top of my head, of parenting it to, let's try a null. Let me delete the camera. But that's a quick walkthrough of Parallax, and you see how without the camera, we lose everything. So you got to have a camera. Everything has to be 3D enabled. And now it's all going to work. Like such. That's Parallax. Are nulls important to Parallax? The null I put in there was to try and get the camera to parent the focus to that null. I can try it one more time. I just don't want to waste everyone's time. I don't like doing that. It used to work. There used to be a way of doing it with a quick expression. Okay, see right here? We're getting some blur happening. So we're in the right direction. Now it's about the focus distance. So I'm going to turn on my expression again by Alt or Option clicking. Oh, I see what I did wrong. I am such a clown. Okay, let's see if this works now. Hold on a second. And then I'll explain what I did wrong. I'm so sorry for wasting time. I was grabbing the pick whip from here, not from the expression. This should fix it. So now let's find out what happens when we change that aperture a bit. Let's move the null and see if the focus changes. Yep. So as the null moves, the focus should change. So let's go minus 500. Yep. There it is. As we go back, you see the focus changing? That's what it was. Okay. So if I were to, let's copy this number again. If I were to parent the null to the cat, and the cat moves about in the scene, forward and backward, the camera focus changes with that. So let's undo that because that's not working once I parented that. But that's what nulls can do. I was just parenting to the wrong thing. So you could even use like text and it'll parent to that text, the focus distance. What I'd done wrong, like I'd said, was in the camera options. I Alt or Option clicked on here. I was not using this pick whip for the expression. I was using that one. So it's definitely that expression pick whip, and that worked. So, you know, focus is going to be important. You might want to do something with this parenting to fix the focus of the camera or easily shift back and forth in Z space. The reason for that being, let's see. I changed the blur a little bit. Let's do something less severe. Okay. Again, if this null is moving forward and backward in Z space, it's going to shift the focus of the camera for you. Okay? So that's pretty important when you want to change what the viewer is looking at. See what I mean? Now look how different this scene is. Everything's blown out except for the cat. And let's pretend that's what you wanted. You could change the blur level. See what I mean? Get something more photorealistic. Or you could go for that weird look. But once you nail where the focus is, then you could change how much blur is happening. And you could also change the shape of it to get a more camera-like. It'll take a little longer to render if you go off the fast one, but that's... Let's see what happens when we zoom out. See, as you zoom, the focus is changing because you're changing your relation to where you are to that null that you're parented to. So that's another thing that adds to the effect. Like such. Again, I Alt or Option clicked, grabbed the pick whip from the expression, and parented it to the null. So that fixes the focus for me. Hope that answers your question. Again, this is for orbiting, rotating around like such. And this is for panning, going side to side, or tilt, going up and down. And this one is for zooming in or zooming out of the scene. You can still have things animate and move in your Parallax. I'm just showing you what it looks like when they're all stepped out like this, and how you can use things like depth of field and lighting and things like that to really help make this pop. And then you could say, well, this is what I want, but the sky's a little bit off. Well, it's really just, juggling. Let's see, where's the sky? I hit P, and I move it over, or scale it up. That's all it is. It's just shifting things around, because remember, based upon the relation of the camera to the elements, that's going to change everything. And then I could say, maybe I want to move that tree a little bit. Completely changes the look of your layout. And remember, it's always faster to work in a lower resolution. I was just upping the resolution so you could see how the camera focus changed. What stopwatch would I use for animating the zooming and panning, for animating the camera movement in the scene? So the null is for when I want to pick an object that I want to focus on. You could literally pick anything. Like, I'm going to do it with the mountain this time. What I was doing wrong was I was not using the expression pick whip. I was not using this one. I was using that one. So I could change it. And I'll show you what I mean. Like, watch this. Here's the neat thing. Okay, let's say for these first few seconds, you want to be there. I'm going to Command Shift D, split, where you can go edit, split layer. And watch this. I'm going to go here. Let's try moving forward a little bit. And then I'm going to pick whip this to the mountain, see if that works, if I can do it that way. Okay, so there's an error there. All right, let's try turning off the expression. The stopwatch. Let's try killing the expression and trying it from the start. We'll see if that works. Now look like oh, I'm a clown. No one called me out on it. I was on the wrong layer. I cannot believe that. Been a long day. Okay, so let's do that properly. First, let's see if we can animate it. Okay, so we're going to go camera options. We're going to go to the beginning. I'm going to turn off the expression. I'm going to turn it on. And I'm going to parent it to the null, which it was, I believe. Okay, good. All right, that worked. So now I'm going to turn it on. Let's say we have it there for a second. I'm going to animate it, and let's see what happens if we then change what it's pointing to. Now, this is experimental. We're going to find out together what happens. But like I said, I had to turn the stopwatch on for it to change that distance. So we'll see if this works. Now the mountains are in focus. Let's see if it changes over time. Back to the cat. Nope. But what would work, so I'm going to hit undo, I'm going to hit undo again. The cat's in focus. Okay. So we have this parented to the null. So what I'll do is 1 second it's on the cat. I'll leave it on the cat for 1 second right here. Then I'm going to grab the Z of the mountain, go forward a second, change that number of the null. There we go. Now the mountain's in focus. Now the cat's in focus. That is the way to do it. Use a null, point the camera to it, and then you can grab the Z of anything you want. So I'm going to click there, go forward, and then I'm going to parent it to where the tree is at. So I'll go P, copy that, paste it into my null. So I'm only moving the null, and since the camera focus is parented to that, it's going to shift the focus, like such. So you could, if you're going to animate the focus, I'd parent it to the null and animate the Z of the null. That's for the focus. Now for the actual camera, let's open that up. 1 second. Question was, how do I animate the... Okay, let me zoom out a little. Let's say we're here. I'm going to click the stopwatch for all of these, because once I mess around with these tools, it's going to make keyframes, and I'm just making sure I've got all of them. So let's do a little bit of an orbit, like such. See, those are the frames that were affected, and we'll do a little bit of that, and that's the XYZ transform. I wonder why that wasn't animated with keyframes, but okay, there is that first part. I'm only getting rotation. Okay, so I'm going to do that, and then let's try P for position. And you see the numbers changing. Okay, now the numbers are changing. There's my position. Let me hit U. That was the position right there. There is the orientation. Okay, so it did not get the pan, but if I do it this way, I can animate it on any axes I want independently. So that's the way I would do it. So let me undo all that. I'm not going to use these tools. I'll just click on all these, and I'm going to rotate the camera a little bit. So the rotate I want for this motion is the Y, and then move the camera a little bit this way, down a little bit. So I'm just messing around with those, but you see that animates the camera, the rotation, and the position all from there. And you want to make sure your images fill up the screen so this doesn't happen. Hopefully that helps you out a little bit with your parallax question. Any other questions, or anyone have some work they want to show me? While I'm waiting, I'm going to see if I can puppet pin this cat, and if that will work, because it is a 3D layer. So we'll see what happens. I'm going to move the camera. Might not let you because it is 3D. We'll see. That's what lab time's all about. Remember, it's not just pinning what you want to move, it's pinning what you don't want to move. Okay, so I'm going to go forward a little bit, and let's move some of these pins, see what happens. And then we'll play it out and see what happens. It looked like the focus changed on the cat. So maybe it'd be puppet pin the cat, pre-compose the layer, then make it 3D. That's just my guess. I'm also thinking we're at a different distance because we moved the camera. So that'll affect the focus as well. So this is where we lose our focus. So let's try, now we got the puppet pinning working, and my guess is because the camera moved. Let's try and fix that null. Oh, see the null, that's where we changed the focus when I was teaching you about the mountain and all that stuff. So now the cat's still in focus. Yep, and the puppet pinning worked. Like such. And I just clicked on any keyframe to bring back up the puppet pins. Like such. Just watch the relation between your pins to make sure the head size keeps its volume. I'm just doing this quickly, just for the fun of it. Just adding a little extra motion for no reason. We'll render that out. And again, if anyone has any questions, just let me know. That's what lab time's for. Pushing your ideas, experimenting, seeing what does and doesn't work. And you can always create shadows with shape layers, like drawing an oval, throwing a Gaussian blur on it, feathering it out, you know, to add a little bit of anchoring this into the scene. Shading would help. I'm just rendering out that puppet pinning, see what happens. And again, this is just mixing and matching several different animating techniques. A little bit of parallax, a little bit of puppet pinning. See what I mean? You know, I'm just messing around, having some fun. But that motion, like I said, if something is alive or moves, even just little bits of motion, help it rather than just sitting still. You know, even if it's just twitching of the ears and the tail, whatever. You know, nothing living except for like trees and plants just stand still all the time. And that was a rushed puppet pin job, but I was just testing out to see if I could puppet pin a 3D layer, and it did work. So if no one else has any questions, or if no one has any questions or things they want to show, or, you know, anything that inspired them that they want me to help break down, we could wrap up in about 5 minutes. I'm just waiting to see if there's any other questions. And believe it or not, the simple parallax that I've done tonight is done in some Hollywood movies to fake sets and things like that into scenes. So it does have its uses. It just takes a little bit of fiddling around once you have everything stepped out and you want to make sure it's scaled up the way you want it to be. The Winona Earp opening. No, I did not. I'll take a look at that right now. And I'll mute it so that I don't get into any trouble. Okay, well, there's a glow. They've got some noise from, you know, camera plugins. One second, let me show you something. Actually, that reminds me of something I could show you real fast. Okay, so you can download those film grain and the hair and all that stuff, but you can also come close to creating it, and I'll show you what I mean by that. Let's get a picture. Let's do the sky that we had. Oh, no, not that one. Sorry. Here we go. Okay, so there's your thing. Now I'm going to add a solid. And don't forget what they did. They had silhouetted out still images. And, you know, they were just putting things behind it like we were just doing. Like, that stuff we've already covered. But let's try Fractal Noise. Okay, so let's do basic. Sure, why not? Let's crank up that contrast. There. Okay, so what I did here, and I'll explain this in a second. Let's up that contrast a little bit less. Okay, so I just have some basic noise. I cranked up the contrast and the brightness. Now, a while back, I said two of the most useful blending modes are screen and multiply. Multiply removed all the white and left the black. Screen removed all the black and left the white. So if I use multiply, I get these little flecks happening. Okay? So, film grain. Let's say we're working at 24 frames per second. Let's do evolution. So I'll click here and I'll try time times. Okay, so let's pretend we've got 4 seconds of animation. I'm at 94. If I'm at 24 frames per second, that would be 80, that'd be 96. Let's try this first. Let's see what happens. Okay, that's not what we want. So we're gonna undo that. Let's try. See, as you do the evolution, you get that motion. But let's try the offset of it. Let's see if that gives us a better thing, because it's 1 frame and then it's moving. So we will do, once I get it working, I'll explain it. Oh, here we go. Offset turbulence. Let's click in that one. Okay, so if we go wiggle, and I'm going to do 24 times a second, which means this is 24 frames. So every second of the frame, it's going to have a wiggle to it. And let's try 7,000. I'm just making up a number. And I will hit the space bar. See, now you're getting that film grain junk happening, okay? Now let's see what it looks like at 5,000. Oops. Okay, not bad. So what is happening is I put an expression. I Alt or Option clicked on the offset turbulence, and I did a wiggle 24 because I'm at 24 frames per second. So every frame, this is moving the texture, and I'm moving it an amount of 5,000. So if you want to see more, you can start messing around with this. So the higher this goes, the more noise we're getting. The lower, the less, like such. And then the brightness will affect it as well because of the blending mode. So you can mess around till you get the amount of film noise like that over your image. So that was just an expression and fractal noise. And we could even say, change the settings of this. See what that looks like. See? You get a different result. It's always going to be different based upon the drop downs you choose. Because you're getting a different type of noise. But the expression will work. See? So it's really the type of noise you want to create. You just mess around with your settings. So that was the offset turbulence. And for the fun of it, let's also do the evolution. Give it a little bit of randomness. Let's try time asterisk. Let's do 200. So we get some randomness of the blocks. It doesn't look like they're just moving straight across the screen. See, that really helps it a lot. It looks more like a natural organic type of film because it's randomizing the texture we're seeing. I'm going to set this to normal so you can see what's happening. See that? That looks realistic. I'm going to get rid of that expression Put it back in. See the difference? It's more random because the evolution is spinning around the fractal. So, like I said, offset turbulence, this is the expression I used, and in the evolution, that's the expression I used. And here were my settings for the noise. And again, all I did was just change the blending mode to multiply. Multiply got rid of the pure white and kept the pure black, just like the film grain. Like such. There's the old-fashioned film noise. And then they just had, the images spread out with the type below them. So, let me hide that noise. There's my cat. I'll scale it up. So they had an image, or you could even do a color, either one. There's your object. And we'll pick a really awful font because that's no time for picking a good one. And if you put that behind the cat, now you've got that. And another thing you could do, tying it all together, let's 3D enable the cat, and we'll 3D enable the text. Like such, there's your noise. We'll bring in a camera. Okay. And let's move that cat over just a little bit, just for the fun of it. Like such. And the text I'm going to send further back. Okay, and here's our camera. And we'll click on all these. Move forward a little bit. Let's do a Y rotate, like such. That's because the sky was not 3D enabled. Now it is. And the reason the type disappeared, because we've got to push back that. Now you've got the noise, the motion, and all that. So it's basically just messing around with layer ordering, how things are going. That was a really severe rotate. We don't even need to rotate it that much. Just a little bit. Give it some life. Like such. And you could animate the characters or whatever. But that's all part of it. Let's take a look at one more of it. Just do season 4 for the fun of it. Was this the one I just opened? Was it 4? Yep, it was. Okay. So I'll break this down shot by shot. That is either a 3D element or they just filmed a gun rolling around, because you see the perspective changing. Right there, that is an instant scale cut. So I'll show you what I mean by that. And I'm only doing this because it ties in with the look and feel you're doing. So we'll go Tools, Color, Transparent. Okay, this is close. We'll do this guy. Save. Now, I'm glad I'm breaking this down shot by shot so that we can go over some of this because this is stuff we've covered a little bit of. All right, so I'm going to hide my camera. I'm going to hide the cat, text, and that. Okay, so we'll bring in the guy. Drop him into our scene. And I'll move him over a little bit. Okay, what we saw here is an instant jump. So we go there, boom, like such. The way of doing that, there's two ways of doing it. So we have less of an image to deal with here. First one I'm going to show you is with toggle hold frames. So I'm going to go S for scale, click here, go forward to whatever I want. It doesn't matter because it's going to be instant. And I'm going to right click and choose toggle hold frame. And then I'll scale them down. And I'll do the same for the position. Let me hold down shift and hit S. I'm going to go here. Okay. So my keyframes line up. I'm going to toggle hold this as well. And I'll move him over there. Okay, so what's going to happen is, make these toggle hold as well. Instant change from one keyframe to the next. That's what toggle hold does. So they did that and then they put in the type. Okay. So there's your text. Now the text, we're going to go to here. And I'm going to, once again, hold down Alt and hit the bracket. Again, that is on a Mac, it's going to be Option. On a PC, it's Alt. But this one is the start of the layer. That's the end of the layer. So think of it as that's the start, that's the end. I did this to cut the start of that layer. Another thing you could do is you could drag and hold down Shift and it'll snap to where the playhead is. That's two ways of changing the start of your layer. So now you get that instant change plus the type appearing. Toggle hold frame and changing where the layer begins. Okay? That's how they did that first part of the animation. There's the texture I was telling you about. That is just inverting an image in Photoshop or in After Effects. And these were just quick cuts between the images. So, okay, so we wrote down this shot. I'm going to get every layer except my noise, because I'll keep that running through the whole thing. I'll call it noise. And I'm going to trim the end of the layer with that, Alt, and that. That's the end of that layer. Now I'll bring in those people. And remember, you can always just slide it down and hold down Shift. Or you can Alt and bracket, which is this one. Either method will work. And these are not transparent, of course. Okay, so I'm going to show you what they did here. Let's say they're going from here to, this is up for like a second. And then they're going to do a hard cut to that with the inverse. So this layer will start here again. That was Alt plus this one to trim the beginning of this one. And I'm going to Alt and that one to trim the end of that one. So there's an instant cut. And I'm going to throw invert on there. And obviously they lined up the shots. You know, let me scale this up a bit. That's a little better. That's a little too tall. Okay, that's livable. And let me throw an extract on there. This should have been silhouetted, but the extract should get rid of. Nope, let's try. There we go. That's what that. They may have had that still in there, but I'm just showing you. I just trimmed out that background. So you get that shot, boom. There's your, just watch your layers don't line up. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. This is why they're doing that. So it's an instant cut. And that was only there for a couple frames. So I'm going to trim the out point of that. Go forward a frame. Trim the in point of this one. So I'm just going quickly from frame to frame like that. And, you know, they had the spooky demon faces there. So really it's just layer management in the timeline. Having some things up for only a couple frames and watching your eye tracing. Like such. That's how they did that. Simple layer management. And they did keep the background, but since it's textured and had some tone to it, you get that nice effect. And they cut out the person and put sorry, gotta drink some water, one sec. So they cut out the person and there's a solid with a ramp behind it. So let's do, I'll do a shift here and I'll zoom in on this person a lot. And we'll pretend that's what they have there. So let's get rid of that background. I'm just doing this quickly. Let's not do extract. Let's try Luma key. Normally, it'd be faster to do this in Photoshop, but I don't want to hop around programs. Okay, let's say about there. Why am I still seeing white? Oh, I'm seeing white because of the noise. Okay, all right. Got it. So let's turn off that noise for a second, just so we could focus on this. Right about there. So I would pre-compose the noise and use it as a blending mode. You know, that's another story for another day. All right, now I'm going to put a layer behind this guy. Let's just do black. No, we'll do red because they have red, like a darkish red. And I'll trim this. I'm holding down shift so it snaps to the start of that layer. See, it's all gone. Good. Let me turn this on. Okay, there's my noise. There's the noise again. Good. Okay, that's working. All right, so ramp. We can say change white to that dark red we had. And if you want, you can make it radial, and you can also change where it starts. So they have it sort of over to the side, like such. And you could also change the point of it like that. Add a little bit of depth to it, and then once again they've got the text. Let me duplicate that. Add it behind the talent. Slide it, and then move it. So it's really just a little bit of layer management, and you get that depth having a little bit by the character. So, it's really, they've got good artwork that they're working off of, but it's very simple techniques. I mean, this barely took any time to reproduce what they did. That's all very simple techniques. It's just good artwork that they're working off of. Same thing. It's like, watch this image in the background. It doesn't move. That's one background image, and they're doing a toggle hold on this character. So they just scaled and positioned that person over the same background image, like we did earlier with right here. That's toggle hold, position and scale. So yeah, these are very simple techniques. They just have good artwork. Blood splatters, you could get blood splatters. Just make sure you're able to key them out and lay them over the layers. But yeah, they just have some good, same thing. But this one right here, so it's a still image. Let's go a little bit slower, so I don't have to rewind it a couple hundred times. All right, here we go. See, that one, they did not do a toggle hold. So it's gradually shrinking down the scale. And that noose, let's check the perspective on that noose. There's no perspective change. That could just be a still image that they're rotating from the top. They put the anchor point up there and they're swinging it side to side. That's all they did there. And again, this element is one and that's another element. So you just have two different background images there. They're scaling up on this still image right there. And let's see the background. That's a single background image that they're scaling up with as well. And this is just some color correcting they did to it with the noise there. Those are particles, probably a flame, a ember spark particle system that they downloaded off of like an action pack that you can get online. And let's go to that part right there. Just rewind that, break it down. This flame element is it, 1 second. Now this is a shortcut for going one frame at a time in what's it called? YouTube. I used to know it. Is it the... Nope. Oh wait, maybe it's the greater than less than. Nope, wait, let's try. There it is. The greater than and less than symbols. So we've got, this is a Luma reveal with a fire element that's bringing it in. So I'm going to say they're doing possibly the Luma mat there to bring that in, and then as the brighter element passes over, that's what's doing it. But that's a video element or a 3D particle system. maybe even multiple ones like sparks, but you could try and recreate something like that with particles. There's a little bit of embers flying around, obviously a glow around that, some texture on the type. Let's... I know I misspelled texture, no one cares. This isn't spelling class. Okay. Oh, looks like it's actually the name of a company. That's pretty awful. All right, let's grab this, just so I don't waste everyone's time. And I'll show you that. One sec. Boom, 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 right here. Let's trim those, stop that there. Go forward. Bring in that texture. Scale it up. All right, great. Okay, so here's our text, here's our texture. Remember, alpha mats, the mask goes over your face. So we're using this text to mask out that texture. So I click on the texture below it. I want to be in my modes. Go over to track mat, change it to alpha mat. Boom, now we've got some textured type. I could duplicate this text, turn it back on. Let's try, instead of a solid, let's go cancel here. Let's try right click, layer style. Let's try a bevel and emboss. Zoom in a little bit here, see what we're doing. And I'm going to change this to luminosity. Well, let's try screen. So if I change this type to white, there we go. Okay. So I changed the color over here. Now we've got the bevel settings. Bevel and emboss that I right clicked and I got from layer styles. Let's try, stick with the inner bevel for the fun of it. Go too big with it, but find out which direction you want it to be, up or down. But now we're getting some more dimensional text. Not gonna soften that at all. And then you could change the harshness of the shadow and the highlight if you want. Let's knock that highlight down a little bit. And, you can put your video behind it of the fire or whatever, but, well, that would be right here. Trim that layer. That's adding, texture and the bevel to the type. We could also scale this down a bit since we don't need it to be full screen anymore because we're just covering up the type with it. Like such. Give it a little bit more finesse. See, that looks much better. That was all of like 3 minutes work, and that type's not half bad at all. So just finding a font. Obviously this font is not good, but I'm just showing you how we quickly textured it and beveled it to give it some interest. So, they did some light transitions and some wipes to bring that in. Maybe next week I could try and break that down a little bit for you, but I won't go too heavily into what they do. Just so you have your own thing. But any other questions based on that? That's a pretty nice intro, to show. And you could do almost all of that in After Effects. So, I'm glad you looked at something reasonable and said, yeah, that's something I could emulate, because you can. So, surprised how interesting that came out so quickly. Like I said, it's all about lighting and texture and color and just trying to come up with something interesting. The bevel on it helps push it and give it that extra dimensionality. Yeah, no problem at all, Isabella. All right, so if there's no further questions, we'll wrap it up here. Thanks for coming in, having work and ideas and things you wanted to go over. We did parallax and puppet pinning and layer. You really can't imagine just those simple things of managing your layers, like these quick cuts, And obviously, I'm holding down shift to stop that there. You don't want that layer being there, but layer management is a very powerful element of motion design. Like just that quick effect that's only up for a couple frames before changing to your next image. I wanted something simple, and my mom was watching the show, and I realized I was feasible from the time. Yep. Yes, you're right. And I explained how they did most of it right now. Yeah, it is doable. Just have good artwork to go off of. They did interesting things with these like toggle holds where it's instant changes. The noise was very easy to recreate over it with those two expressions that are in there. Color ramps, layer stacking, adding some depth to it. You could push it even more, like I showed you with that dress where we put a turbulent displace on the dress to make it flap in the wind. Pretty easy to get some of this stuff going. So yeah, excellent. I keep looking forward to see what everyone does throughout the week. Email me if you've got any questions. If you upload your Google Drive folder, email me, let me know, because I don't get alerts. And that's about it. Have a great weekend and keep the good work coming along.